Hi everybody, it is the end of National Poetry Month, the very last day, and in honor of that I wanted to make public a lesson that I've taught before called Poetry 101. This is for anybody who does not have a lot of experience with poetry, no experience with poetry. That's what this class is intended for. High school, college, adult, doesn't matter. If you see me looking down, that's where my notes are. And then I'll talk a little bit about my own experience afterward, but as far as YouTube video goes, I like it when the speaker gets to the chase, so that's what we're going to do. In my opinion, there are three kinds of people in this world. There are poets, there are people who think they can write poetry and haven't tried it yet, and there are people who don't think they can write poetry and they haven't tried it yet. So basically, I believe that anybody can be a poet. We're all at different skill levels and experience levels. We all have different preferences about what kind of poetry we like. And so tonight's goals is for you to practice writing poetry if you've never done that before, and to add more tools to your poetry toolbox. So in my opinion, there are two really great ways to do this. You can actually talk about the craft of poetry. You can read about the craft of writing poetry by reading other people's poems. Our goal is to do both of those things, and I just want to make a quick plug here to let you know that this part of the class is way more fun in person. So if you have a group of students who are interested in this lesson, I would love to look into doing that for your class via Zoom or a creative writing group, or if you live near me, and you can message me to find that information out. Maybe we can do an in-person class, which those are always my favorite. So let's first talk about, well, we'll go over reading the kinds of poetry first. I'm only going to do brief snippets of these poems for copyright reasons. It can be such a gray area, even though this is an educational video. We're just going to do snippets. We're going to start with maybe there are two kinds of poetry I think that people initially think of. The first one is it's just A, B rhyming scheme. And probably if you're just starting, you're like, okay, Morgan, what does that mean? And that's a good question. It means the ends of the lines, every other line rhymes. Often these poems have the same meter for every line, or very close to the same meter, and every stanza would have either repeating or a very similar rhyme scheme. And if you don't know the word stanza, that is kind of like a paragraph but for a poem. So it's a group of lines that the author feels goes together, and depending on the type of poem you're writing, there are different rules for the stanzas. In my opinion, that is one of the most fun things about poetry, is there might be rules for the type of poem that you're writing, but in general, there are very few rules about what constitutes a poem. It's kind of up to you as the author. So go ham. So this first piece is called Grandma and the Possum by Leland Scott. I'm only going to read you two stanzas out of many. If you like this style or you're interested in it, you can find it in the book What Was That? Animal Encounters Anthology by the Shiawassee area writers. That's something that you can buy on Amazon. And I happen to know Leland. He is a very kind person, and I am very thankful to know him. So, two stanzas by him. It happened right outside our door. I swear to you it's true. How Grandma trained a possum, and what'd that critter do? Grandma fed the birds each day with birdseed and a feeder, and with peanut butter sandwiches fed the squirrels who came to see her. So if you're interested in what happens in the rest of that poem, I hope you'll check out that book. And this is the part where I would just ask you, if you're the educator, to pause the video and ask your students, what is it that you notice about this poem? What sticks out to you? So give it a pause. Did you pause it? Okay, good. Some things that stick out to me are, again, the rhyme scheme. This poem in particular has a little bit of a lighter tone. We're talking about a possum and Grandma feeding the possum. And in my opinion, the writing scheme and the meter adds to that. Now, what do I mean by the word meter? That is the pacing of the lines. Since this is Poetry 101, we're not going to get super into it, and also because it's not really one of my favorite parts about poetry. But the meter is like the amount of syllables and the way that the poem feels as you read it. Pacing, rhythm, those are similar words, though not exactly the same. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about that poem. Let's talk about another kind. The other kind of poetry I think people initially think of, if they don't have a lot of poetry experience, is formal poetry writing. So things like sonnets, where there's a lot of rules. There's rules for how many syllables are in the line. There's rules for how the rhyme scheme goes. Sometimes there's like general expectations for what the content might be, depending. Haiku is another example of a form poem. There's a specific form. If you're good at writing haikus, that's amazing. It is something that I just not good at it. So this is what I would term a loose sonnet. It follows some of those rules, but not all of them, which is probably why I like it, because I'm not a huge form poet. But this is called There Comes the Strangest Moment by Kate Light. You can find this in Good Poems for Hard Times, which is edited by Garrison Keillor, and as heard on the Writer's Almanac in 2006. We're just going to look at the first stanza, which is hard for me to do because I love this one and you have to read it all the way through to really get the full impact. There comes the strangest moment in your life when everything you thought before breaks free. What you relied upon as ground rule and as right looks upside down from how it used to be. And I really hope that you'll look this one up because it's good. So if you can in your classroom, look it up, give it a read. And this is where I would say, take some time real quick, pause the video and answer the question, what do you notice that's different about this poem from the one that we looked at before? I'm going to scroll up on my notes while you guys talk about that. Okay, we have two more. Next, we're going to talk about my personal type of poetry that I tend to lean toward, which is free verse. This, I mean, the verse is free. There are not very many rules. And by that, I mean the grammar rules, the meter rules, whether or not you're rhyming, how long a stanza is, all of those things are self-contained within the poem. You get to make it based on the content that you're writing. So when I was teaching this class, I had somebody ask me, like, so how do I know when I practice writing my poems, where do I do a line break if I'm doing free verse? And the truth is, like, you can decide. And so the more you practice poetry, the more you will get comfortable picking where those line breaks are. And if you start reading those poems to your peers and getting feedback and reading other poetry, that will start to shape your craft too. But again, we're just learning. There's not a ton of rules. The main goal of this lesson is for you to learn a little bit and then try it. Like, for real, just try it. Don't worry, there's not really a wrong answer. So this is one of my favorites. It's called actually, this is my most favorite poem. The President of the Bear Arms Society by Keegan Bradford. You can find this in the Lamp Literary Magazine, which was released by Liberty University in the fall of 2011. I just happened to be visiting and got a copy. And this is one of the reasons I would say, if you are a beginning poet, don't talk yourself out of submitting to small presses or small publications, because you don't know, you might write somebody's favorite poem. This is one of mine, and it's not a very popular one. So we'll do two stanzas here because I think that's the best way to see what I mean when I say free verse about the lack of rules. This is one where if you decide to download the PDF that goes with this lesson, you can see more of what it looks like, because the grammar matters here. The punctuation impacts the way that the poem is told, especially because there aren't a lot of rules about the syllables or the rhyming in this particular piece. The President of the Bear Arms Society. I do not fit in my grandfather's watch, a gift for my 16th birthday. I am a thin-wrist member of the Bear Arms Society, those of us who never need to know what time is. When my grandmother moved to Florida, she covered every clock. The microwave eternally blinks, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 12 o'clock, and a sticky note converted the oven from a kitchen timer to pure convection. It's done when it's done. The bright honesty of beginning and ending the day with the sun. There's more to that poem. I could just sit and like rest in this poem's meanings for quite a while. So free verse for that. And this is where I wish that we were in person so you could ask questions. One more type of poem, and then I hope to release you to give this a shot. And if you have any questions, you can always send me a message or email me. This last one is what is called a prose poem. Prose, if you don't know this word, is a term for like long form writing where there's complete sentences. Prose poetry is very unique because it's almost like tiny paragraphs, but the language is hyper concentrated, usually very focused on imagery, and it really feels like a poem when you read it all together, even though it's lacking some of the stanza breaks typically, and the pieces are incomplete sentences. So this poem is one of my favorites as well. It's by Ellis Klatt, who used to be the poet laureate of, I believe, Grand Rapids. You can find this poem on the Michigan Poet, published in December of 2012. And again, the URL is on that PDF. And the reason I also like to read this poem is Ellis Klatt has a funny rant on this web page about how he used to not like prose poems, and then he just found himself writing them. So that's the other thing about poetry. You might not like something, but all of a sudden you have a feeling or an idea that fits into a specific poem form, and that's just how it happens. So I'll just read a couple lines of this, and it's all one block paragraph, so I'm just going to read the first 2 sentences. This is called General Motors by Ellis Klatt. Though the GM plant has long been abandoned, birches grow in its decaying heap of automotive manuals. Thus, after a generation of feeding, a grove arises, then papier-mâché automobiles suspended in branches like nests. This one is easier to understand if you are able to look it up and read it. But we do have to talk about it. So these are some of the limitations of YouTube and not being in person and getting to like look at these papers together. So I really encourage you to take the time to do that. So there are lots and lots of kinds of poetry. We just talked about free verse poems, prose poems, form poems, and 2 kinds of form poems, ones that rhyme and ones that have a lot more rules than that. Once you've read those poems and taken a look and thought about some of the differences you see and similarities, then it's time for us to practice writing poetry. If you haven't done this before, I think it can feel really intimidating, but there are a couple really easy ways to try it. One way is to look at one of these style poems that we've looked at today, or if your teacher has some examples in the classroom that you can look through, pick one that you like, and then try to do that same style about your own topic. So if the poem is rhyming a certain way, try to mirror that, or if it seems to have certain stanza breaks or like a certain style, you can give that a shot. So you pick the thing that you're writing about, and then you copy the style of another poem. It's a really cool way to try new things. You can also take a free write. So this is where you pause this video and you spend 3 minutes just writing about something random that matters to you. Usually something that you really don't like or that you really, really like. A lot of people find inspiration in nature, the people they love, their pets, or even silly things like something they saw at the store or while they're on the bus. So take 3 minutes and just write. Just write sentences. Don't stop yourself. There's no wrong answer. You're not allowed to take your pencil off the paper. And then you can work on turning that into a poem. When I say go, pause the video and spend 3 minutes writing. Ready? Go. Did you do it? Okay. If I was teaching the class, I would sit down and I would be writing during that time too. It's a really good time to practice. So once you've done that, then you take those poems, or you take that free verse, and you can try to shape it and morph it. Pull out the pieces that you really, really like and grow those using a form that you've seen today that you like. I think it sounds more complicated than it is, and it's just so helpful to keep reminding yourself there's no wrong answer. You're trying something for the first time. And then let me look at my notes here. The last one, I think, gets easier the more you do it. And this is that you might have a poetic line or thought, poetic, something very strong in imagery or language or emotion pop into your mind or your heart. And you can take that and you can just grow it and grow it and grow it until it becomes a poem. And growing it might be, what is the story that goes along with this feeling or thought that I have? What is the image that goes along with this thought or feeling I have? Or what is it that I want my reader to take away with them when they're done reading this piece that is related to this thought or image I have? What is the takeaway, the so what? When you're doing any of those things, you will be using your poetry toolbox. And I'm just going to take a couple minutes to formalize the things we've already been talking about. As we looked at each of those poems, we covered some really important vocabulary. Those are parts of your poetry toolbox. So rhyme, that's how words sound at the end. Typically at the end, there's different kinds of rhyme though. That's a different lesson altogether. Meter, which is, the amount of syllables and how they relate to each other. Imagery, that is taking your words and using them to direct your reader's vision to see things in a very strong way. One of my favorites is to have plays on words, so where you're using words to have double meanings or to make people re-examine something. Form, there's so many ways that you could have form in your poems. We've talked about stanzas, we've talked about line breaks, line placement. Some people like to indent lines or not, or use italics. All those things you can use to create meaning. And then finally, grammar, or the lack thereof, depending on the kind of poem you're writing. I hope that you wrote those things down, and you can look for them in the poems that we've discussed today and the poems that you will continue to encounter as I hope you continue to read poetry. If you're an educator or a student and you've watched this video and you have questions, please message me. I have many years of experience as a writing tutor, and then after my formal experiences ended, I've continued to teach and write and help others experience words in the ways that I think are really important. Words have the power to change people, encourage, bring hope and light in a world that feels increasingly dark and scary. So I just encourage you to continue on your poetic journey. Don't stop yourself because you feel nervous about trying something new. You can do it, and I'm excited to see what you come up with.